Welcome to She's a Full-On Monet, a digital lifestyle magazine for women. Every week, our editor-in-chief, Kelly Castillo, along with Megan Block and special guests, participate in a deep dive discussion about recent articles and topics we have covered. We invite you to become part of our community where everyone's welcome. You can totally sit with us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to She's a Full-On Monet. This is your host, Kelly, and I have with me, as always, Megan.
Hello, everybody.
And we are glad to be back. We did take a little break. Last week's podcast, we actually recorded before the holiday. So this is our first recording session after the Christmas and New Year holidays. So we are glad to be back. Welcome, everyone, to 2022. And let's hope it's a good year, a better year for everyone.
Oh man, I know. My kid was like, I told her we were doing the podcast. She's like, you haven't done a podcast in a minute. Like in the way she said it. And I was like, oh yeah. Like it feels like when we take 2 weeks off, it feels like it's a long time. So
yeah, it was strange because taking the time off wasn't our decision. It was our production company that, closed their offices for the holiday, but it was kind of a forced break for us. And it was nice. I didn't realize that we kind of needed to recharge our batteries, but I guess we did.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yep. So far, so good with the new year. It's 3 days in, but I am hopeful.
I am hopeful as well. I really think I don't want to say this is going to be our year because, that seems like it's going to jinx us, but I feel like 2020 was awful. And then 2021, everyone was kind of just on autopilot. And not for the website. It was an amazing year for us. 2021, we grew 600% in our traffic and readers. And that, I can't even tell you how grateful I am for that. And just the support that we've gotten from everybody and the team that we've built, I think is incredible. So I'm jazzed. 2021 for business was a really great year, but I think personally, it was a little bit weird. Everyone kind of felt like they were just going through the motions because everything was still limited. And we
were never given full permission to not by anyone in particular, but I mean, even right now, it's still there's a lot of people that are sick. And so it's like, we were never given full permission and when we were, it was like quickly taken back. So, we wanted, I don't know. I'm just hopeful that this is going to be a better, healthier, happier year all around for everybody.
I agree. At the beginning of last year, I thought, okay, the vaccines are coming any minute now. And then once we all get vaccinated, like everything will be back to normal, like, just a click kind of thing. And that is not at all what happened.
No.
So I kept waiting for that moment and it never came. And so it was a little bit, disconcerting. Even when things went back to a little bit of normal, we opened and closed, my husband's brokerage office over and over again throughout the year. Even just as of last week, someone at the office holiday party found out after without symptoms that they had COVID and everybody had to work from home again for 14 days or whatever. It was,
Yeah, it's hard. And you go out, if you do go out, a lot of places are severely understaffed right now because there's either a lot of people sick or they're being precautionary and trying to keep people home. So it's just like, do we all want to just like move forward? Of course, but there are these moments of deja vu we keep getting thrown back in our faces of like, oh, maybe maybe not 20, like it just feels like a weird time. But
we tend to travel a lot and we haven't been over the last, 2 years. So it's a very strange thing for us because we're not used to it. We had pushed back a European trip to this December. I know I told you about it. We were so excited and that got canceled. So now we've got one in July and we don't even know if that's going to happen. So it's just weird. It's
hard
still
to make
weird
plans
time.
and it's hard to be excited even if you have them because who knows what the world's going to be in that moment or what the rules are going to be or traveling situation,
Yeah, it's crazy. But I hope that things get better. I have a daughter who would really like to plan her wedding, but it's very disappointing when you don't know what's even going to be possible. It's hard to get excited about anything like that.
And no one should have to have like a toned down version of what they deserve because the world is funky right now. I know a lot of people that just did it anyway, and it wasn't even what they wanted. And that's not okay.
Yeah, of course, it should be about the commitment and not about the day. And we all understand that, but she's only planning to get married once.
Try telling that to anyone who's had a wedding though. Like they had that opportunity without even thinking about this as like when I planned my wedding, COVID was not a thing, not even a concept that there would be something out there like this that would keep me from having in people and gathering and getting venues and getting people. Like I have a friend whose sister's trying to get married. It's probably a really frustrating time for a bride, because
it absolutely is. And
you get the green light and then it goes away again.
And I have to tell you this, over the holiday, we were talking about wedding planning and all of that. And Colin, my son, had mentioned how at the time that you got married, he was a teenager, right? Like middle school age. And I don't even know how he fully remembers the occasion because he didn't seem very involved in it. He wasn't part of the bridal party or anything like me and Gabby were, but he said, I remember Megan's wedding, and he's like, at the time I was so impressed. It was like such a beautiful wedding and they did such a good job. And I was like, for a teenage boy to even like process how, yeah, it was pretty funny.
That, when you hear like when a kid compliments you and you're like, that's the epitome of the best compliment ever because you're unfiltered. Like when a teenage boy tells you did a good job, that means I did a really good job, because like anyone else could say stuff, but he noticed. So
yeah, I don't know if any of our readers and listeners have teenage boys, but they think everything sucks and you're all stupid. So for him to
remember the food or something like that. Like that's really cool. Yeah, and you should have that ability to just like use if there's a certain venue you want to go to or a certain people you want catering your wedding. Like a lot of people shut down during these moments because they don't want to get their entire staff sick. So they their precaution, or venues aren't just open. So we're off topic, but I'm just saying, I am hoping for the new year that we are just able to live our lives again and be happy for these moments and not have this moment of fear that it might not happen, because you want to go all in, but you don't want to break anyone's heart.
No. And health and happiness is what we wish for everyone who is listening or watching. And we were talking before we started recording today about the importance of celebrating the small moments in life. And we really can do that best when we can share it with our closest people. I mean, we had a little get together at our house yesterday, and it was only 6 people because we're still trying to kind of limit, exposure. And so hopefully that can get resolved in 2022 so that we can start to get together again with everyone that we care about. Because I miss all your faces.
Right? It's just not fair. Time's not promised. People are having baby. Like I know there's a friend of mine has had a baby and it's now become like a toddler. And before the pandemic, she told me that she was pregnant. It's just it feels like it's been no time, but so much time at the same time.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, so today's topic, I think, is incredibly interesting. And it was something that I had never heard of before. But once I heard of it and read about it, I realized that I am guilty of this. So
same. There's a thing for everything. I know I'm doing a lot of things I'm unaware of. There's a name for it.
Yes. So I am very excited to talk about this. And I have to say that we have to give credit where credit is due. This topic comes from an article written in the New Yorker, which I love the New Yorker. Half the time, full awareness and confession time, I don't always know what they're talking about. It's a really highbrow publication.
If you do, you're not my people. So, it's a lot.
But I do appreciate the writing in the New Yorker is just always, always amazing. And their editorial team is fantastic. But they wrote an article back in August of 2020. And it was written by an author named Katie Waldman. And it was about works of fiction, and she was reviewing some movies and books that she had recently consumed that had this topic in it. But she brought out, to my awareness at least, the topic of the reflexivity trap, or as I actually prefer, awareness laundering. I think that just makes more sense to my brain, but however you want to refer to it, people refer to it as a reflexivity trap. I've seen that in like Vanity Fair and Vox and the New Yorker, or she also refers to it as awareness laundering. So that is what we're going to talk about today. And don't worry, we will define this for you because
I had no idea, but if you break it down the words and then when we talk about it, it makes total sense. And
we're about to introduce you to a problem you didn't even know you had.
Or you're aware of it and you're like, is that a thing? Yes, it's a thing.
Yes, it's a thing. So basically, what she refers to as the reflexivity trap is the idea that professing awareness of a fault, it does not absolve you of that fault. And it's something that a lot of people do. It's a bad habit. And I will share how I'm guilty of that so we can talk about it. I have I never used to. I used to be so good at this, but I used to always be on time for everything. And now I run consistently like 10 to 15 minutes late for everything. And what's funny is that when my kids were little, when I had every reason to be late, I was always on time. But now that my kids are out of the house, for some reason, I am always late. I don't know how that happened.
Do you find that happened a lot after the pandemic? Because I feel like I lost my ability to time things right because I stayed inside for too long. And now I don't know how to because I'm notoriously earlier on time. And now I'm the same way and I cannot get it together. And I'm I just forgot,
I myself am ready on time. I have a partner who consistently runs much later than 10 to 15 minutes. So I manage that. But even if I'm on my own, I found that I severely underestimate the time it takes me to get anywhere now. And I don't know what maybe it's pandemic related. I don't know, but it's a new thing for me. But this is a problem for me personally. This is not the problem we're talking about. The problem we're talking about is that I consistently am 10 to 15 minutes late for things. And I walk into the meeting or it's always an in-person thing. I'm fine on Zoom. I'm always on time. I walk into meetings and I say, very self-deprecating, I'm so sorry. I'm always late. I'm the worst. And so I reflexively absolve myself of it by being so self-aware, but I have not done anything to correct the problem. So that is what awareness laundering basically is. It is when you profess awareness of your own faults and you somehow believe that absolves you of that fault.
I'd like to meet the person who doesn't do this. I feel like this is so, my oldest child does this, and I tell her all the time, this does not make it okay, but I'm also totally guilty of being, great example, 10 to 15 minutes late and then completely trying to hit my own blows so that no one else can hit it for me so that it's okay, but it's not okay. And I also haven't done anything to change the behavior.
Yeah, because the thing is, when I do that, when I walk into a meeting and I immediately say, I'm so sorry, I'm always running late, I am the worst, and I make a joke out of it, the reflex of the other people in the meeting are to say, it's okay, here's what you missed. They accept, it's not even an apology, but they accept it and they absolve me of it as well by saying it's fine. And it's not fine. It's super rude to be late all the time. So I need to work on that rather than just try to be the one that says something first and gets everyone else to say, oh, it's fine. It's not fine.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's hard because some people will look back and go, this is not in my control. The fact that I'm notoriously late, for example, is not in my control. Yeah, but maybe there's something you can do. I noticed that when things were like that and I felt like I couldn't just get it together in the mornings and I was always running out the door to get Emma to school. And I was like, what is going on? How can I not time this right? If I just start my day a little earlier intentionally, then I give myself that extra time. So I'm not in it, I'm not rushing, I'm not rushing out the door. I'm not rushing to a meeting. I'm not rushing to gymnastics practice or whatever, because I started, but here's the other thing. If I have too much time, then I don't time it right. And then I'm late, so it's completely not okay, but if you're doing something afterwards to change the behavior, that's not awareness laundering. Awareness laundering is doing it notoriously over and over and not doing anything to change the behavior, but just putting yourself down so that others can pick you up. Right.
Yeah, it's almost fishing for the absolution. And I mean, I know exactly what the correction is. I need whatever time I think I need to leave. I need to make myself leave 10 to 15 minutes earlier than that. And then if I'm early, I'll sit in my car and play Candy Crush on my phone or something. Who cares? But I'm not doing it. So this is exactly awareness laundering. And I will say, okay, I can use another example because being late, it's bad, but it's not awful, horrible, unforgivable. My partner has a bad temper. Everyone who knows him knows he has a bad temper. I will say he's actively working on it and he's really made a ton of progress in the last decade for sure. And he jokes old dog, new tricks, all of that, but he really is doing much better at giving himself the space between when something happens and when he reacts to it to kind of, count to 10 or whatever he needs to do to but he in the past and still occasionally will lose his temper and then say, well, I have a bad temper. I'm hot blooded or he makes
almost like it's okay because
but
that's what he's known for.
Yeah. I have a bad temper. I mean, I'm doing my best, but sometimes I lose it. No, you're still responsible for your behavior. Even if, yes, everyone knows you have a bad temper and yes, you are doing better. You're still responsible for whatever you say when you lose your temper, however you act. Now, I mean, of course, his bad temper is just kind of mellowed out to like the grumpiness as he gets older, but it's not like when he was
just because you're known for it doesn't make the behavior okay or
exactly my point. So it's not just about being late. It could be anything. It could be gossiping. It could be having a bad temper. It could be anything that you shouldn't be doing and then you do it. And I hear people, I'm in like a few of the mom groups and not as much anymore because my kids are out of the house. But I remember when we would actively get together in mom group or go to mom wine night or whatever we were doing. And I would hear from someone say, I don't mean to gossip, but, and then spill so much tea. And then they would be like, oh, I'm talking out of turn. I shouldn't, I know better, and then make a joke out of it. And everybody encourages it and laughs and they want to hear the tea, obviously. But if you shouldn't be gossiping and you don't like other people who gossip.
It's such the call to attention. It's not.
And you don't want people to gossip about you. Like, what the issue is.
Yeah.
You're
worry about your image at that point more than, And you're trying to absolve the fact that you're blatantly doing it right after you say you don't want to do it. It's like, well, being a human being is a funny thing, right?
Right. I mean, we are all just humans.
I feel like a lot of us do this. I feel like a lot of us do this on some scale. We do this. And do we do this? And it's like, because so many of us do this, it's not excusable, but normal, because we all are aware of it. But was it ever a thing? I'd never heard about this until you talked about this topic.
Well, we have normalized it a lot. And what I've noticed is that the younger generation, like my kids' generation, is so self-aware or woke or whatever you want to call it. And they analyze themselves. They like psychoanalyze themselves. And they have all these like buzzwords that they use for their behavior and the causes of their behavior. This is what I see on, especially you can find this so many instances of this, like on TikTok is the worst, where they'll call themselves out on a bad behavior and call it a trauma response. And then that absolves them of the bad behavior. No, sir, it does not. Like the thing is that level of self-awareness, it needs to be a starting point. It needs to be a starting point on working on it. It does just saying that you're aware of this is not the finish line. Like self-awareness is not the finish line. It is the starting point. So I'm so happy for them that they've psychoanalyzed themselves and they figured out what their issues are, but that's not enough. You also have to work on those issues. That's us all wanting to be the best version of ourselves, right? As we should be. If that's not your 2022 New Year's resolution, I give you permission to adopt it immediately. Be the best version of yourself.
Yeah. No, it's true.
But I think, sometimes they're really focused on being self-aware, which I think is amazing because I can think back to like my parents' generation or my grandparents' generation. The level of self-awareness was like zero.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely great, but we can all call it literally half the journey right there.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, cool. You're aware. Now you got to do something about it, because if you just keep notoriously showing up late to everything and thinking that that's going to be like, I don't know. My mom was like aware that she was always late to everything. And I don't feel like she ever did anything to change the behavior. I do remember a family joke was that everybody would tell my mom to be an hour earlier than it was actual. So she would be there on time. And even then she'd still be late. But it's like, homegirl never did anything to change her behavior. People just accepted it. But you had to be aware you were late. So it's like, is this new? Is this a newer thing that people are we all just kind of halfway there where we're just kind of accepting it? Now in 2022, we need to actually take action, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I do see in past generations, there was a lot of emphasis put on having good manners, and just for the sake of having good manners, of showing that you were well raised and that you were, a polite
it was all for image purposes.
Exactly. And now what I see is a focus on empathy for other people's experience and situations and compassion and things like that, where that's the point of having good manners, is to not impact other people's experiences. So yeah, I do think that it's going the right direction, but I think it gets to the point where we kind of, and this was also in the New Yorker article, it gets to the point where we're congratulating ourselves on our self-awareness that, oh, I've spent enough time looking inward that I can correctly diagnose all my own flaws. And that kind of, that's great. That is, as you said, step one, but it shouldn't discourage you from further action. Like, you have to take the next step and saying, okay, now that I've figured out what my flaws are, I'm going to work on them, instead of just, please congratulate me, I'm so self-aware. And that's what I see in a lot of those TikTok videos. I don't know how they always end up on my For You page. I think it's trying to tell me something, but they're talking about this, I do this because this is my trauma response. I have that, I have this. And everyone in the comments is like, oh, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for making us aware. Like, you're so brave. All these congratulations on just looking inward enough to figure that out, which it is. You should congratulate people on that, but it's the first step of a journey. It shouldn't be the finish line of that journey, just to say, now I know what's wrong with me. And I think also sometimes we have so many of these terms and diagnoses for certain things that now we can kind of use it almost as a free pass for, oh, I act this way because I have this. Well, yes, now you know why, but you should still work on correcting it if it's correctable.
I agree. Yeah. A lot of people are, because right now we're really, mental health is a well talked about thing. People, trying to seek, help for whatever they're going through is also a talked about thing, when we had already talked about in previous episodes before, it wasn't so talked about.
Yes.
But yeah, we can't just stop there though. How many times are on, we keep using the late thing because it's a great example that's not really talking about anyone in particular, but how many times are you going to be late until you're actually going to do something about it? I'm a natural people pleaser, and I don't like to upset people naturally. So my natural instinct is to, if I notice that a behavior is causing a negative response for other people or affecting people's experiences in a negative way, I naturally want to fix it anyway, because I just naturally want to please people. But if that's not your natural response, then are you just stuck in this awareness, this awareness area where you're not doing anything about it? How do you take action to fix these problems,
Right. Instead of just saying, oh yeah, sorry, I'm like that, I'm a Gemini or whatever. What?
Oh my God, such a great example.
Have you not heard people do that though? Or be like, sorry, I have attachment disorder. Okay. I understand.
That's such a great example. It's I didn't. And it's and then they, the Gemini thing kills me, because that's so true. People are so into their signs that it's oh, it gives me a reason to be detached because I'm a Gemini or whatever. It's laughable, because it's oh, okay, now let me go and alter my life experience because you're a Gemini, or I just
the world at large and society at large and the people in your life should not have to adjust their expectations of you because you have diagnosed yourself with something, or someone else has diagnosed you with something, or you're a certain
for the sake of people have enough going on. I'll use my mom for an example. She was an amazing woman, but the fact that everyone in my family circle had to adjust a timing because Janine couldn't get it together. People have enough going. My aunt probably had other stuff going on in her life that was the last thing she had to worry about. Why did my mom put that on her shoulders? I don't know. We got to stop doing that to people. We got to take action and fix it, because if you really think about it, it's not that hard. You pointed out, 10 to 15 minutes. What were we doing? Was anyone scrolling on TikTok for a little too long that morning? And maybe that's why they're late. Maybe there's a little bit of reflection and accountability that we could take that could fix our problems on a minor level that added up could really shock people in our life. It would shock people if my mom was just on top. They'd be like, whoa, but to them it's a big deal because for a while it's built up, and it's not cool. And I'm so guilty of this. I am not preaching as if I am not guilty, because I'm so guilty on a few levels, I'm sure, And I don't want to be that person anymore because I don't think it's cool.
Yeah. And I think there's this huge movement right now in society, especially for those younger generations, of being your authentic self, living unapologetically in your own skin and the way you are and the way God made you or whatever. And I love it. I'm so here for it. But when you being exactly who you are unapologetically influences like other people's right to live their lives, or the just general polite society rules of general polite society, then I think we've kind of fetishized individualism to a point that when we're asked to do anything for the collective good, it feels like oppression, which is crazy.
It is. That is,
which
totally
is crazy.
True. That is. Totally
I mean,
true.
I have a son who has sensory issues. Now we know he has sensory issues. He's 27. Like he knows he has sensory issues. He always has since he was a baby. And he hates the feeling of his clothes after they've been washed. We know that. We struggled with it like when he was really young. If you wash his clothes, he just simply will not wear them. They feel yucky to him. But in order to live in society, in order to have a relationship, in order to work a job, you can't show up like a hot, stinky mess. Like you just can't. You have to wear clean clothes. You have to, get past whatever. Yes, everyone knows that this is the issue. You have to do your own work to work through that issue so that you can be successful in society. I mean, you can't impact everyone around you by wearing like super stinky old clothes. Like, you know what I'm saying?
It's totally, yeah. There is a boundary of understandably be yourself. And then there is where it starts to affect others and starts to affect their quality of life. He deserves to have a great relationship, a great job, this and that. That should not affect that. But this is how the world works. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, if it's starting to affect other people's environment and other people's abilities to enjoy themselves or whatever we're talking about, then you got to like do something about that. You can't just be aware of it and like declare it and make a cool transitional TikTok out of it. Like you got to be deeper than that. It's not okay. So that's really great that there's an article and that there's a term for it. And maybe it'll cause people to do something about it. Cause I feel like deep down, if you're that into being aware, you're also not wanting, like, there's got to be some part of you that also wants to change the behavior. I feel,
Yeah.
Like,
if you're talking totally
about for like being cool purposes of like, oh, I'm aware. Like most people, if they're trying to be aware of what they're doing, they also would like to fix it if it's a negative thing for people they love.
Yeah. And I think I will say this, if you have recently become aware of a behavior that you don't like about yourself or that isn't acceptable in society as a whole, and you're working on it, it's okay to let people know, hey, I have this issue and I'm working. And if you're sincerely working on it, and to say like, I'm working on it, and ask for a little bit of patience in the process, because nobody flicks a switch and solves something in their life right away. Yeah. So that's okay to ask for a little bit of grace while you work on something. And I think everyone will agree that they're happy to give that to you, most people. But if you just say it like, oh, I have this, and then are expecting the world to absolve you from the rules of society, and I don't think it works that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of this could, correct me if I'm wrong, but this reminds me of, an issue that I had like in my marriage with Dan, where like I would do something when we would be fighting, and it would be like, it would be something, it would be like a defense mechanism, and he would be so upset about it because it would trigger him to do something else. And I would be like, well, I don't mean to do it. I'm not even realizing I'm saying it when I'm saying it. And he's like, that doesn't make it okay. So I realized I was doing a behavior when we were in like a high pressure situation and arguing, and it was causing him to hurt a lot. And I was using that as an excuse because I wasn't aware, like caveman brain kind of thing. And I realized that I needed to fix this, but I also realized that I was doing it like subconsciously. So there was going to be a learning curve, and he was happy to give it to me because I was aware of the problem and actively working on it, and no one's perfect. So yes, if there's a behavior that's not so easy to fix overnight like that, then you do need to have the person or the people affected know you're working on it, because you will mess up and you will misstep, and it is no reflection on you, and you don't want that person to say things that will cause you to go backwards in your, progress,
Right. If you're in a relationship with your partner and you tell them, hey, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but when you do this, it makes me feel like this. Or when you say this, this is how I feel. And then they continue to do that behavior. They have a responsibility, and you can draw boundaries wherever you want to. So if you have that conversation and they say, wow, I didn't know you felt that way, I'm going to work on that. And you see that they're making any kind of effort to work on that, then by all means, like, celebrate the attempt to,
because no one's perfect. It's not as easy as just adding 10 to 15 minutes in your day to get ready. I know some of the issues that people might be resonating with when hearing this episode, they might be thinking a much deeper issue. Yes, it's not going to be an overnight thing, but give them the grace to try, because like you said with your partner, like, it's not a perfect, but it's certainly an improvement from where it was, and if we have pushed them off right at the very moment of like showing that sign again, that progress may not have been made at all.
That's exactly what it is. Because I have personal boundaries, and there have been times in our relationship where he crossed those boundaries in a moment of anger or whatever. And I give him a lot of grace, because I know how hard it is to change a behavior you've had for 60 plus years.
Oh yeah.
And I know I see where it comes from. So I give him a lot of grace, but when I see that he's actually working towards something, and I can, when he's upset about something, I can see him trying to calm himself down. And I have so much compassion for that, and so much respect for him for trying, that I know it's not going to be perfect. And if he slips up, I'm not going to be like, that's it, we're done, you crossed my back.
It takes a lot to like shut off that part,
Yeah.
It shows real growth and real commitment to growing, and you can't be mad at that person at all. But we all have we all deserve, we all have health, boundaries of what we will take, so that's why if they're showing improvement and there's, at some point that behavior's got to be absolved at some point,
Exactly. And that's where this whole topic starts and ends. There's a difference between speaking up and taking responsibility for something that you're doing and letting somebody know that this is something I am actively working on, versus what we're talking about, awareness laundering, where you're just kind of voicing it first to absolve yourself. And that is a very different thing. So I think anytime you hear somebody doing this, of course, we want to give people the benefit of the doubt and assume that if they're bringing up something that is, whether it's that they're late or they're doing something that's bothering you, and they know they're doing something that's bothering you, we're all hopeful that means they're working on it. But just be aware that this is a thing that people are doing.
Yeah. Because they could be aware of it, and they could be, one, maybe two more slip ups, or it could just be like a repetitive behavior of what we're talking about. And that, if you're, I don't know, it's, nobody ever likes to be told that something they're doing is not cool. We always get defensive when that kind of stuff comes up, but sometimes being told that you're doing that behavior is the start to the process of changing it and actively doing something about it. Like, hey, instead of always being late, maybe try leaving 10 to 15 minutes early. You've said it 7 to 8 times. And they're like, oh, shoot, I had no idea that, because you fall into this behavior and this pattern and you're unaware of it sometimes, Yeah.
And I think if you as a person have gotten into the habit of just giving yourself permission to do things a certain way because you have, some therapist told you that you're this, or that you have that, or you have labeled yourself as such, or you're a Virgo, or whatever it is. Like,
oh my
gosh. Having information is helpful to figure out why you do the things that you do. It's not permission to continue to do them if you know that they hurt other people, or they're just generally,
it really isn't,
making your life harder or whatever. I mean, if you're in therapy and your therapist says, oh, well, I can see this behavior comes from this past trauma, that's a super great tool to understand why you react the way that you do. I think self-awareness is so important, but it isn't permission to just continue to do that.
I'm a total example of that. I realized that I was doing a behavior in our arguments because of a past trauma, but I was so aware of it. But it's like some people have these issues come up. The anger is a good example of it. What I did, of like bringing things up repeatedly just to like those are things almost like ticks, where it's like you're not even like it's your brain, and then there's like the caveman brain that takes over where you're not even like fully in charge. And that's the hardest time to fix those moments. And that's why we give grace for those moments, because we know how hard it is. So
yeah. And there's sometimes the behaviors that we're talking about, they're there for a reason. They're there because in some way they work for you. Maybe it's a survival skill that you learned when you were in a fight or flight kind of relationship, or a traumatic childhood or whatever, wherever it came from. But some part of the healing from things that have happened to us in our past and our responsibility is not just healing the thought process and stuff that we have, but actually letting go of some of the survival skills that we needed when we were in that situation, but that no longer serve us. And that's the next step. Once you've kind of figured out why you do the things that you do, work on a kind of letting go of all the emotional stuff that's involved with it. And then the next step is letting go of those survival skills, because I know from my experience, I have like knee-jerk reactions to things that I know exactly where it comes from. And I have to actively see myself doing it and like give myself that little space to make a different choice, because it no longer serves me. It did for a long time, but I'm in a different situation now. So I choose different behaviors. But I know I'll always like, because it was wired in childhood or whatever, I'll always knee jerk to that if I don't give myself that space. But that's my responsibility as an adult. It's not anyone's. And you can go back and say, oh, well, I'm like this because of my parents. I'm like this because of.
Yeah, what we're all products of our childhood. Like try and find somebody who doesn't have something funky that they could use if they wanted to, that doesn't give the behavior an excuse. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
No, and the why you are like this is totally valid, but it's like you said, it's not an excuse for it. Once you're an adult, it's your own responsibility of how you respond to people and situations, all of the, interactions that you have with other people. If you perpetuate, bad behavior, and you can blame anyone you want to, but once you're an adult, it is your own responsibility. So I think everybody has something in their life that they know they should be working on. Maybe they are, and maybe they're not. So this is kind of we're sorry in advance for shining a big old.
We're prime. I've given 2 prime examples of this is me to a T. It's totally okay, but it's like we don't want to continue the toxicity that might have been okay in 2020 and 2021 to now follow. We're in a new year, we're in the whole vibe right now for everybody on some small level, even if it's just like eat more vegetables. Like they're trying to improve some part of their life, and this is the part of your life that's like easier to excuse because like we've kind of discussed, it's normalized a little bit, but that doesn't make it less harmful to the people that you're affecting. I feel like a lot of people would really like some of these toxic behaviors altered if possible a little bit, and it would just make the overall morale of humanity better. If we would just stop excusing our like whatever's going on or giving light to it, but not doing a thing about it. It's not just a cool trend. It's like something that's like a start of a process. You don't decide to do a marathon and then like halfway through the marathon be like, yeah, I did it. I got my picture in, we're good. Right? Like, no, you have to like keep going and finish it to say you did it. You can't just show up and do half of it. That's what this is.
Yeah. And I see women a lot in like dating relationships, preliminary beginning stages of dating, give mostly men like so many chances when they say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I always do this. I'm so terrible. I know, like I'm so bad. I'm so bad at texting back. I know I always leave people on red. Like, then don't. If you know that upsets people, then don't. Or if I've actively told you, I need you to check in with me at least every couple of days so I know you're alive. And they're just like, oh yeah, I'm the worst. I'm so bad at texting people back. I just told you what I need. And
could you imagine if like you just like responded back with, then don't be that way. Like in all seriousness, if we just started calling people out when they called themselves out and didn't give them any wiggle room to be like, oh, it's okay. Yeah, that's totally you. Or like giggle it off because we don't like confrontation or whatever it is, it's
Oh yeah. Or the best one is when they say like that they have trust issues because of an old girlfriend or something, bad relationship that they went through. So they're going to be super controlling and super like ask you all the time, all these crazy questions about where you were and who you were with. And you haven't done anything to deserve it. You're super uncomfortable with the whole interaction, but they're like, oh, I've been hurt. And I have so many friends who are like, oh, well, I think like I can just make it better. And like, he just needs to learn to trust. No, girl, no, you are not responsible for whatever happened.
The broken
pieces with that guy. Like, he needs to work on, that the answer to that is, I'm sorry you went through that. Why don't you go work on that? And then you can like call me back when you've processed, because
that's just whoever is saying that to you, giving you an excuse, giving themselves an excuse to maybe be a total F up this whole time, just to like be emotionally unavailable, maybe cheat on you. I don't know. I'm a product of like a past trauma. So good luck. And you're like, no,
who isn't a product of past trauma?
That's what I mean. It's like, welcome to being a human being. I thought that I was cool and like went into the world with like issues like parents splitting up and this and that happening. And I'm like, oh, you too. Oh, you too. Oh, you too. Oh, everyone has problems. Cool. Okay. That's first rule of being an adult, finding out that you are not unique and the fact that you have a trauma you can resource back to for your poor behavior.
No. Oh, I went through a bad divorce. Yeah, same. Same. But you know what? I'm a functioning human.
Yeah, I was a product of one and I went through one and I'm not a horrible human being. How about that? Like, I'm a unicorn. Look at me. You need to just own it. Great. That's great. You're better than probably our parents and our grandparents, but also like, fix it if it's fixable. There's so many options out there for whatever version of fix it is for your problem.
And I'm not trying to call out men and pick on men, because I know a lot of girls who I've been friends with in my life who have chose horrible relationships that were terrible for them and then blamed it on having daddy issues or whatever. And okay, then go fix your issues because how is this benefiting you? Like, you are heartbroken every time I talk to you, and yet you do nothing to fix the problem. Go get some therapy, work on that.
Oh gosh, there's no, at this day and age with how many options for therapy and how many versions of therapy that there are. There is no reason to have your personal stuff going on, because we all have personal stuff going on. That's okay. To let it affect people repeatedly in a negative form on any level, know?
So and we don't have the right to disrupt other people's experiences. No. And I remember from the time when my kids were little and we would be out to eat in a restaurant or something and they would be acting up. And I would explain to them, first of all, I'd take them outside. And then I would explain to them, like, everyone in that restaurant is paying money that they worked for to have the experience of eating out. And you don't have the right to take that from them. You don't have the right to mess that up. Like they're paying money for that they had to work hard for that. We had a whole conversations about that, whether we were at the movies or out to eat, about how you don't get to ruin someone else's experience. And I think a lot of adults, maybe like they didn't learn that lesson.
No, I know. I have really well-behaved children. We don't go out to eat very often or go out a lot, but when we do, they understand that they're sharing that experience with other people. And I get told surprisingly by a waitress or people like how well-behaved my kids are. And I'm like, oh, it's not like the norm for people to not, because I think they excuse the behavior or they normalize the behavior, or their kids are always like that. So that's just okay. Like they've normalized it themselves because they've excused it enough times to where it's now okay.
Yeah. We were just out to eat the other day and there was a small boy. He was probably like 4, just running crazy around the restaurant, climbing on and off of booths and jumping up and down. And
how Connor gets.
He's got so much energy. Boys will be boy. And I was like, no.
Why is that okay? Oh, because I have 2 boys. They never did that. That's what you're probably thinking. You're
exactly.
Like, this is inexcusable.
No, my boys did crazy stuff, but they kept that craziness to home. Like, we hid our crazy when we went out of the house.
Right?
That's what we do in society. You're responsible for hiding your crazy when you leave the house. That's the whole point of what we're talking about.
And not because it's this image. I don't want people, oh my gosh, my kid is, no, it's because like for the reason you said, I don't think that I have any right to steal anyone's experience away from them. It's not that I'm worried that somebody's going to think I'm a bad mom if my kid's acting crazy. It's because like, they're not monkeys and they know how to behave. This wouldn't be okay at my house, in home, it wouldn't be okay for you to be acting like this. Why would it be okay in public,
Yeah. And this topic and this behavior to me is very closely aligned with something else that we've talked about on the site, which is like performative allyship. When companies or people outwardly display all their wonderful qualities and how aware they are and how, inclusive they are and how much diversity they have, but they do not actively take any steps to live those values. That is a major problem, especially with corporations right now, where they want in their advertisement and in the messages that they spread, they want to say happy Pride. They want to change their logo to a rainbow that month, or they want to talk about, when Black Lives Matter, everyone was talking about it. They wanted to talk about it. They wanted to be part of the conversation, but they weren't doing anything to further that agenda in their own like corporate board or in their company value system. And as soon as that quote unquote trend, I don't want to call it that because it's actually a value system. But they treated it like a trend. And as soon as the hashtag wasn't trending anymore, they're silent. And so that to me is very similar to this. It's when you do this awareness laundering thing and you preemptively kind of make fun of yourself and your faults so that other people will say, oh, it's not a problem. It's very performative. And we want to make changes to our behavior that get us closer to the person we want to be. That's furthering the agenda.
If you're truly trying to humanize your brand, your image, like whatever, you're truly trying to humanize yourself. If you're truly trying to get to the truest version of you and you're trying to be the actual best version of you, it's more than just proclaiming it. It's more than just saying it out loud. It's actually making real change and making that change long-term, not just once it's been silenced for a while. Because if you go back to, and we'll just keep using the example, being late all the time after you weren't late for a while and people know you're capable of doing it, that's worse because they know you're capable of real change and it wasn't enough and it wasn't important enough for you to make it stick, you know? So find a way to make real change that's long lasting for these things. And it's good because if the tables were turned, you'd want that person to do that for you. Like if there was something that was repeatedly hurting you and the person just didn't do anything about it, that would be really frustrating. So like treat like the basic of all basic principles, treat others how you would want to be treated. Like if that behavior is affecting someone and you're aware of it, don't just talk about it, do something about it.
Yeah. I mean, if it at the most very basic, if you were in line at the grocery store or pharmacy, someplace like that, and you stepped backwards on someone's toe, you obviously would turn around and say, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you there. Or I didn't mean to step on you. Are you okay? Like that is what probably everyone would do. It is no different if you are unintentionally hurting someone or impacting their experience in a negative way in any one of your other behaviors. So if you would do that in that circumstance, then you should also react the same, even if it's something that is a regular occurrence for you, because it's still impacting someone's experience and it's still unintentionally hurting them. Or like being late is just, and I know I do it, so I'm talking about myself here. I understand that my time is not important than anyone else's time. And for people to have to actively wait 10 to 15 minutes for me is just disrespectful of their time and of, the experience, whatever kind of meeting I'm heading into. It just shows a lack of professionalism, a lack of respect. I was raised better than that. My dad would be so mad if he heard me say that I'm late all the time right now. And I do know I need to fix it. So I got into this habit of not fixing it and just saying, oh my gosh, I'm always late. And I'm not doing it anymore because I'm not going to always be late. So
look at us.
I just said that to everyone who's going to hear this. So now I actually have to do it.
I really am. Yeah, no, it's something that we like to talk about and also actively change within ourselves too, because there's so many examples of things I'd like to not just excuse anymore because people have been used to hearing it, but actually change. Because it doesn't feel good also to excuse it. I mean, any parent knows that we don't just tell our kids just to like say they're sorry, but actually like be sorry and change the behavior. It's more than just a word. It's like, oh, I'm saying it, but I'm totally not even doing it in my own real life. Cool. That feels great. That feels like a lie, you know? Yeah. Because I tell my kids all the time, don't just say you're sorry, change the behavior that you're sorry about. You've done it 3 times today. And I'm like, oh, look at me doing the same thing. So, you know.
Yeah, I taught my kids that from a very early age. Like, don't come and tell me you're sorry. Come and tell me you're sorry, and then tell me what you're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. I need 2 steps to this,
or
I don't want to hear it in the first place. Because if you say you're sorry and then do it again immediately,
it's like the boy who cried wolf. I mean, the realness of it goes away after you've said it for the 15th time. You're like, oh, I won't do it again. Sure, you won't. We all know you will, but we're just gonna sit around in here and pretend like those words mean anything. You know,
right?
You want to lose your words. So if you don't have your words, you don't have anything. That's a very important thing. You know?
Yeah, it really is. And it feels very dismissive to the people around you for you to apologize for something you're clearly not sorry for. And like you said, have every intention of doing again. Mm-hmm. It feels dismissive of their feelings.
It lost the meaning of the word I'm sorry, you know, because it's always followed up almost with like, you know, the behavior and then like some self-deprecating thing where it's like, are you sorry? You know, sorry means that you're not going to like do it again, right? It's not just like a Band-Aid. You don't just use it when it's good for you. So
yeah.
Look at us.
So yeah, this is a good topic. I hope that, you know, this resonated with some people, and maybe this was like the exact time you needed to hear this, or, you know, someone else that in your life that you want to share this with that could benefit from it in a non-aggressive way. I can think of some people.
Said it multiple times. We are not perfect people. We need to fix it ourselves. It's cool.
Yeah, I can think of some people in my life that I could forward this episode to, for sure. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And again, thank you guys again for your patience while we were on break. Thank you for your loyalty coming back week to week and sharing this podcast with other people. If you do enjoy it, please, share it. Not just this message, but the podcast in general. We appreciate that. It is the best form of marketing that we have. So if you want to talk about this some more, always head to Facebook. We have a discussion group on there. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and what you're actively working on in 2022. Because now you heard us call ourselves out for this. We're gonna have to fix it now. So
Agreed.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget to bookmark our site, she'safullonmonet.com. and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're enjoying this podcast, it helps us a lot if you can follow, rate, and review. See y'all next week.